Hello, welcome to my place. We are going through a devotional on Hebrews chapter 6 right now, and we're in verses 13 to 18. Let me read them for you. For when God made a promise to Abraham, because he could swear by no one greater, he swore by himself, saying, "Surely blessing I will bless you, and multiplying I will multiply you." And so after he had patiently endured, he obtained the promise. For men indeed swear by the greater, and an oath for confirmation is for them an end of all dispute. Thus God, determining to show more abundantly to the heirs of promise the immutability of his counsel, confirmed it by an oath, that by two immutable things in which it is impossible for God to lie, we might have strong consolation, who have fled for refuge to lay hold for the hope set before us. Now, I don't know about you, but I've always loved stories about the Wild West. As a kid, well, in fact, it might even be into the older ages as well, I wanted to exist in the era portrayed on Western TV shows or movies, or even in books. But the most intriguing aspect of that era, of that day and age, was that a man's word was his bond. And I know that it expands beyond the Wild West, but that's where I truly see it mostly. Their ability to keep their word was the biggest part of their reputation. If they broke their word, it damaged the reputation, and people wouldn't do business with them. They wouldn't converse with them. Sometimes they wouldn't even be friends with the person. Personally, how I try to live my life is that my word is my bond. These verses tell us that God didn't just promise, but he swore the promise by his own name. He couldn't swear by anything greater because he is the greatest. The promises of God are based on his name and on his reputation. If he started to break his promises, then his reputation would be ruined. You know, I always have a problem when someone tells me that their prayers weren't answered because it was God's will, but what they were wanting was actually part of God's promises. I do not see it as God's will when a prayer is not answered that is promised in his word. I don't see it that way. I see it that we need to figure out why that connection was not there. It's just like a light switch. If I go to the light switch over here and I turn off the switch, well, the power goes off. If I turn it on, the power goes on. And that's how we live our lives. But what happens if I flick that switch and nothing happens? Well, somewhere along the line, there was a break. There was something that is not occurring that should cause that power to go on when the switch is hit. Same thing with God's promises. God's promises say, if this is what I am going to do. And so we need to figure out how to get the power to the promise. And why it doesn't is something that we need to figure out ourselves. And that's where it comes in place, where I look at it, that we need to have communication with God. We need to be listening to him and going into his word and talking to others and figuring out, okay, what am I supposed to do to obtain that promise? It's just like yesterday, where I was talking that we really hope for something. We're going to do everything in our power so that we can see it come to fruition. And so it's the same thing in regards to prayers. We need to do everything we can to figure out how to get from here to here and see that our promises have been answered. And I do believe that God made those promises on his word and his reputation. And if we would get to that point where his reputation was expanding in our world, people would be drawn to us because of God's reputation. Not because of yours, because of God's reputation. I truly trust that you've enjoyed this. I pray that you will like and that you will comment and that you will share these posts with others. God bless you richly. We'll see you next time.